Good evening, students. Good evening, Ustad Kiran, Mohit, Darshan, Bhumika, Ms. Singh, Rajiv Kumar, Diksha, Shivangini, and all others. So today, students, we are going to start all together a new chapter. That is chapter number 5. And the name of chapter is Fraud and Responsibilities of Auditor in this regard. So students, this chapter is largely based upon essay 240. So on which essay this chapter is based upon? It is based upon essay 240 and it also contains some law provisions, some legal provisions of Companies Act 2013, which are concerned with the reporting responsibilities of auditor in relation to fraud. Okay. Yes, Darshan, definitely. Why are you getting confused? Risk of material misstatement is component of audit risk. It consists of two parts, inherent risk and control risk. Where is the confusion? Okay. So shall we start, guys? So before we go into the technicalities of what is meant by fraud, as per essay 240, I think all of you have heard about the term fraud, corporate frauds. It is a very common term. You have read it about in newspapers, in TV news, on your social media accounts, and everywhere. It is everywhere. So tell me, guys, say if there is a listed company whose shares are listed on stock exchange, and there comes a news that say there is a fraud in the company, or there has been a fraud in the company, or company itself informs the exchanges, something like that. So what would be the consequence of that? What would happen? Say if it is reported that there is a fraud in some company, then what would happen to the listed company and to others? What would happen, guys? Yes, tell me. Tell me, drop your mails. What would happen? How does fraud affect the company or investors and like that and other stakeholders? Yes, it is not in your module. Do not go through your module. I am talking you. I am asking you a very general question. Yes, Diksha has sent the mail and others. What about others? Yes, students. Very simple things, general things. The purpose is to kick start the session. The purpose is just to kick start the session so that you can know the context in which we are going to understand the topic, the context in which we are going to study, and why it is important. Yes, three mails have come. Diksha, Himanshu Pathak, and Kishore. Now Darshan, Shivangini, Bhumi. So almost all of you are writing, guys, correctly. Now Diksha is saying loss in the goodwill of the entity. That's fine, good. Himanshu is saying stock prices of the company will be smashed down. Yes, Himanshu, yes. Correct. So it means that all of you guys are very aware of events happening around you, and Darshan is writing it is bound to give explanation. Shivangini is also saying share prices decrease, goodwill affected. True state is not presented. Yes, Ustad, yes, it is okay. And Manisha is saying share prices of company fall as investors become pessimistic. Yes, Manisha, you are dot on. So say when a fraud is reported, then confidence of investors in the company is shattered. Okay, so you know, guys, finance is built upon trust. All business dealings are built upon trust, which is a crucial factor. So what does the fraud do? It destroys the confidence of investors. It shakes them. Obviously, the share prices will crash. As a result of which investors' wealth will be eroded. So there would be regulatory actions and all other things would follow. So here in this chapter, students, we are concerned with how an auditor is concerned with fraud, and what are his reporting responsibilities if during the course of his audit, if during the course of performance of his duties, he finds that an offense of fraud has been committed. Okay, so today we will be doing the first part, and on day after tomorrow we will be doing the second part, the reporting responsibilities. Today we will be learning about what is the technical definition of fraud as per SA 240. What are its various features, contours, and how managements can commit fraud, how employees can commit frauds, what are different type of misstatements arising due to fraud. So all these things we shall be discussing today. Okay. So first of all, let us understand what is the meaning of fraud. Meaning of fraud. As per SA 240. So what is the name of SA? SA 240, and it relates to the auditor's responsibilities in relation to fraud in an audit of financial statements. Okay. So SA 240 states that fraud is an intentional act. Number one, it is an intentional act. Now this you can say I am first breaking up the definition. Breaking up the definition for your convenience. So you can also say I am writing elements of definition. As I have told you repeatedly in previous classes also, that if you understand the definition, if you remember the definition, half of your work is done. So fraud is an intentional act. Number two, it is committed by one or more individuals. Okay, so there may be one person or more than one person. It is an intentional act, means it is done with a purpose. जानबूझ के किया गया. Because if it is unintentional, then it becomes error. So intentional is the basic hallmark in fraud. Intention should be there. Okay. So one or more individuals have committed it, and these persons may be from management, okay, or charged with governance, again same persons who are responsible for governing the company, where these functions are separate. Number 3, employees and third parties. कोई और बाहर वाला भी हो सकता है, थर्ड पार्टीज. सो इसमें 4 category of players. So SA 240 talks about 4 category of players from which individuals may commit a fraud. So these are management, people charged with governance, employees and third parties. Okay. And how it is done? It involves use of deception. Use of deception to make a what? To make an illegal or unjust advantage. Say Himanshu, a third party like some supplier, they may commit a fraud on the company. They can commit a fraud on the company, say by supplying say some goods which are different from what are required, which are not in accordance with the terms of the contract. Okay. So use of deception. Use of deception means, what is deception? Yes, students, do you know what is deception? Deception comes from the word to deceive. So what is deception? Yes. Can you tell guys what is deception? Deception का क्या मतलब होता है? क्या आपको पता है स्टूडेंट? Just write in your own words. Yes. To cheat. Darshan is saying to cheat. Mohit, dhokha. Yes. It means you understand the term. Okay. So deception means to make somebody accept something as true. Accept something as true where it is in fact false. ओके कि आपके सामने कोई चीज पड़ी है और मैं उसको आपको ये समझाऊं कि ये ठीक है, ये सच है, जबकि एक्चुअल में वो वैलिड नहीं है. ओके. जबकि एक्चुअल में वो फॉल्स नहीं है. सो ही वुड ट्राई टू डिसीव मी, ही वुड ट्राई टू चीट मी by misrepresenting with me. Okay. So deception, obviously deception involves You know a term, guys? You know a term, camouflage? You know this term? Chupana. So deception involves camouflage. Okay. So the management, the employees, they might deceive by hiding something, by representing some facts as true, whereas these are untrue. Okay. So, and it is done to make an illegal or unjust advantage. So illegal or unjust advantage means which is not legally due, which can they derive advantage from it, which does not accrue to them legally, which is lawfully not permissible. Okay. Yes, Darshan, you are writing correctly. Used by military to hide themselves. So I was just trying to explain to you to make you understand better. Okay. So is that fine? You have understood the definition of fraud. So let us repeat it once again. So fraud is an intentional act committed by one or more individuals. Okay, committed by one or more individuals involving management, those charged with governance, employees, or third parties, involving use of deception to gain an illegal or unjust advantage. So that is the definition of fraud as per SA 240. Okay. So guys, fraud is also defined in Companies Act in section 147. So that definition is wider than this definition, and but it is more or less on these lines. Okay. Fraud is also defined in Companies Act 2013 in section 447, and the definition there is on the similar lines, but it is slightly broader than what is there in SA 240, because SA 240 defines the term fraud in the context of misstatements arising from fraud in relation to duties of auditor relating to fraud. Okay. So clear to you guys? The definition is clear to you? So students, the auditor is concerned with fraud that causes misstatements. Students, we have been learning from the very beginning, from the chapter 1, and we have also specifically learnt in chapter 3 under SA 315 that misstatements can arise from errors or frauds. Okay. So what was the outcome of the what was the objective of the auditor? The objective of the auditor was to ensure that financial statements are free from material misstatements, whether due to errors or frauds. Okay. So misstatements can arise either due to errors or due to frauds. So errors are unintentional, genuine mistakes, whereas frauds are intentional. These are done to gain some advantage involving use of deception. Okay. So clear, guys? So misstatements can be of two types. In context of fraud, misstatements can be of two types. So what are those misstatements? Misstatements resulting from fraudulent financial reporting. Fraudulent financial reporting and misstatements resulting from misappropriation of assets. So we shall be discussing the misstatements arising from fraud under these two heads. So what is fraudulent financial reporting and what is misappropriation of assets, and how misstatements can arise from fraudulent financial reporting and how these can arise from misappropriation of assets. These things we shall be discussing in context of SA 240. Okay, fine, guys. Have you understood it, students? Darshan, we will come to your question in a short while. We will come to your query in short while. This topic is coming. So I do not want to waste time here. So this is the definition of fraud, which we have already done. An intentional act by one or more individuals among management, those charged with governance, employees or third parties, involving the use of deception. So that is very important. Involving the use of deception to obtain an unjust or illegal advantage. Okay. So fraud, auditor is concerned with fraud that causes a material misstatement in the financial statements. Obviously, frauds are causing material misstatements. If fraud has occurred, then something in the financial statements is misstated. Okay, say either revenues will be misstated if a fraud has occurred by misstating, by say overstating revenues. So the revenues would be materially misstated. Okay, or it could be the fake expenses have been booked. So there would be a misstatement pertaining to expenses. Okay, so the auditor in any ways is concerned with misstatements because it is directly related to his opinion. He has to give his opinion on the basis whether there are material misstatements in financial statements or not. It's as simple as that. The logic is quite clear. Okay. So two types of intentional misstatements are relevant to the auditor. One is misstatements resulting from fraudulent financial reporting, and another is misstatements resulting from misappropriation of assets. Okay. So although auditor may suspect or in rare cases identify the occurrence of fraud, auditor doesn't make legal determinations whether fraud has actually occurred. So guys, you have to understand this point, that fraud is an offense. It is an offense in IPC. So it is finally for the courts to decide. Cheating is an offense. Like cheating is an offense. You have heard about section 420? 420 कहते हैं ना? So it is for the courts to decide ultimately to see whether fraud has occurred or not. Okay, so the auditor, he can suspect, he believes that an offense of fraud has been committed. Okay, but whether it is legally sustainable or not, whether legally, what are the legal contours of it, what are the legal boundaries of it, that is to be decided by courts of law. Okay, because ultimately the courts have to interpret. So again, misstatements in financial statements can arise from fraud or error. Fraud is a legal concept. So first we shall take fraudulent financial reporting. Fraudulent financial reporting. And guys, there are these three factors. That why fraud is committed? Why fraud is committed? So generally, you know, why fraud is committed. It is known to you. Somebody wants to gain some pecuniary advantage, monetary benefit. Generally, you know. So fraud, whether it relates due to fraudulent financial reporting or whether it relates due to misappropriation of assets, it has three type of motives. It has three type of motives. Now first we shall understand what are those motives as per SC 240. Now one is incentive or pressure to commit fraudulent financial reporting. Now what is this? Incentive or pressure to commit fraudulent financial reporting. Say students, it might happen, for example, a very simple example we can take, that say a company wants to avail more credit facilities from a bank. It wants to take more loan from a bank. Okay, so there is an incentive for the management to give a rosy picture to the bank that look, our sales are increasing, we have achieved so much sales, which is say 100% more than last year's sales. Our profits are also increasing. By showing this kind of rosy picture to the bankers, they want to avail credit facilities. Okay, or say another example could be there can be pressure upon the management people or on the employees of the company to meet undesirable targets. Okay, so to achieve those targets, they may fudge the figures, they may fake the figures. Okay, so because say as per management system, say profitability targets are given to the different responsibility centers in the company. Okay, and some centers may not be able to achieve it, so they might try to, the employees may try to indulge in fraudulent financial reporting. Okay, so when management is under pressure from sources inside or outside the entity to achieve an expected and unrealistic earnings target or financial outcome. Okay, so there is an incentive or pressure to commit fraudulent financial reporting. Number two is, this is one. Number two is perceived opportunity to commit fraud. Say if there is some employee and the management has established an internal control system in relation to performance of certain activities. Okay, but the employee is in such a position that he knows that if he commits fraud, he will not be caught, and the internal controls can be bypassed. Like if you know a very simple example, not related with that, if you know that you would not be caught at the red light while crossing the signal, then most of you will not stop. Okay, so similarly, if the employees think that they can easily override the controls, okay, then and they can bypass the controls, then they can use it as an opportunity to commit fraud, because they know that even by committing fraud, by bypassing the rules and regulations, they will not be caught, or there is a very low probability, you can say. Okay, so perceived opportunity to commit fraud. Clear? So number three is attitudes and rationalization. What is number three? Attitudes and rationalization. So what is this? Say some people you have to understand, they are in the habit of doing things in unethical ways. Okay, आप उनको जितना समझा लो कि भैया सीधा जाना है, वो हमेशा टेढ़ा ही जाएंगे. ओके, वो तो आप उनको कहो कि ऐसे करना है, दे वुड से कि ये तो ऐसे ही होता है, कोई बात नहीं, सब चलता है. सो दिस एटीट्यूड, this unethical, dishonest attitude, which is reflective of their character, it prompts them to commit fraud. Okay, so clear कि वो उसकी नेचर ही ऐसी है, उसका सेट ऑफ वैल्यूज, उसकी एथिकल वैल्यूज उस आदमी की ऐसी हैं, कुछ इंडिविजुअल्स की, दैट दे वुड कमिट डिसऑनेस्ट एक्ट्स. आप उनको कोई सी भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज दे दीजिए, वो उसमें दे वुड फाइंड वेज. ओके, सो थ्री टाइप ऑफ things we have learned. So these are three type of motives, you can say, applicable to both fraudulent financial reporting and also to misappropriation of assets. So what are these three type of motives, you can say? One is incentive or pressure to commit fraudulent financial reporting, and second is perceived opportunity to commit fraud. Okay, and third is attitudes of rationalization, that they would, some individuals would try to rationalize everything. वो गलत काम भी करेंगे तो उसको they would try to justify it. Okay, clear to all of you? Yes, students, clear? So now we will discuss fraudulent financial reporting. fraudulent financial reporting. And how it is committed. How fraudulent financial reporting is committed. So fraudulent financial reporting in turn can involve three things. Okay, it can involve three things. So what are those three things? These three things are manipulation of accounts. It means falsification. Accounts को manipulate करना. जैसे say overbooking of sales, overbooking of revenue, booking of fake expenses, charging capital expenditure item to revenue account, to revenue items, so as to lower the profits. So one thing is falsification of accounts, manipulation of accounts. And what is second thing? Second thing is misrepresentation or intentional omission. So when you simply misrepresent or omit a significant thing, say a significant disclosure is required in the financial statements as per law. Okay, but that disclosure is intentionally not made so as to mislead the users. Okay, so that amounts to misrepresentation or intentional omission. Third thing is, what is third thing? Third thing is intentional misapplication of accounting principles. तो अकाउंटिंग प्रिंसिपल्स तो आपको पता ही है स्टूडेंट्स, बता सकते हैं आप क्या किसी अकाउंटिंग प्रिंसिपल का नाम बता सकते हैं? कैन यू टेल नेम ऑफ एनी वन अकाउंटिंग प्रिंसिपल? यस गाइस, एनी वन अकाउंटिंग प्रिंसिपल. से लाइक you have read about मैचिंग प्रिंसिपल. अकाउंट्स में पढ़ा आपने मैचिंग प्रिंसिपल. So all costs should be matched with revenues. Okay, so जो एक्सपेंसेस हैं वो रेवेन्यूज के साथ मैच होने चाहिए. जिस साल का रेवेन्यू है उसी साल के एक्सपेंसेस होने चाहिए, अदरवाइज पिक्चर क्या होगी? फ्रॉडुलेंट, फॉल्सिफाइड. ओके, सो there can be intentional misapplication of accounting principles. Okay, yes, historical cost, it is also correct. Going concern, yes. So fraudulent financial reporting can involve three things. One is falsification or manipulation of accounts. Second is misrepresentation or intentional omission, and third is intentional misapplication of accounting principles. Okay, so when a company manipulates accounts, okay, so what are its motives? कोई कंपनी क्यों अपने अकाउंट्स मैनिपुलेट करेगी? And how it can be done? First is why, what is the motive, and later we shall come to how it is done. Now what is the motive of manipulation of accounts, guys? Yes, anybody? Do not see your module, just generally. Why a company would manipulate its accounts? Why a company would try to manipulate its accounts, would try to falsify its accounts? Any reason you can think of, guys? Yes, only Mohit has answered. Mohit, you have answered correctly. To avoid tax. Yes, to reduce tax amount, Sushma is saying that is also correct. Kanchan is saying to hide their revenues for to avail bank loan. Yes, that is also. Darshan is also saying to avail more bank loan. So that is true. So students, accounts are falsified, accounts are manipulated, say to avoid taxes, to avoid income tax or other taxes. Okay. Or another motive could be for declaring a dividend when there are insufficient profits. So actually the profits in the company are lower. So the point states, the meaning of this is that actually the profits are lower, but the company is trying to show more profits for declaring a dividend. ओके, ताकि उसके शेयर प्राइसेस जो है वो मार्केट में ठीक रहे, स्टॉक एक्सचेंज पे ठीक रहे. ओके, यस, टू इंप्रेस इन्वेस्टर्स, सेम पॉइंट. और अगेन रिवर्स ऑफ इट, इसको उल्टा, to withhold declaration of dividend when there is adequate profit. Say company is earning good profits, but it doesn't want to declare dividend. Okay, so it would lower its profits to manipulate the share prices, so that some persons, selected persons, they buy the shares at lower cost. Okay. Or say when in certain class of companies managerial remuneration is payable with reference to profits, then obviously to show higher profits, because in certain companies managerial remuneration is payable as a percentage of profit. So more the profits the company will show, the greater remuneration they will get. So this can be one of the motive. Then how it is done? But how these things are done, how profits are reduced, how profits can be reduced, how profits can be inflated. Okay, so these can be done, guys, in many ways. These can be done in many ways, like by artificially raising the sales. जो मेरा revenue नहीं है, I book fake sales to show more profits, or to suppress the sales. Or if a company wants to show lower profits, it may suppress the sales. If it doesn't want to pay the taxes, it wants to show lower profit, it may book fake expenses, or it may charge some capital expenditure item to revenue account under expenses head. Okay, so as to cause misstatements. So these all things would fall under fraudulent financial reporting, where financial reporting itself is fraudulent, or say to overvalue the inventories to show more profits, or to undervalue the inventories to show lower profits. So got the point, guys? Does it sound interesting? Yes. Does it sound interesting, guys? You are not getting bored? Tell me. Are you getting bored? Yes, any ways it can be done. Mala is saying they may increase their assets by showing bad debts as. Okay, Mala, that doesn't, you are not clear in your mind what you are trying to say. So inflating or suppressing purchases and expenses. Inflating or suppressing sales and other items of income. Like I've told you, inflating or deflating values of closing inventories, failing to adjust outstanding to adjust outstanding liabilities or prepaid expenses. So these are all, you can say, accounting tricks, all trickery, all skullduggery, tricking. No, third party, how third party can directly deceive the auditor? It can deceive the auditor only when say the auditor asks for certain information and that party provides knowingly wrong information. So that is its possibility is quite low, but it can happen. It can happen. Okay. So charging items of capital to revenue or by capitalizing revenue expenses. So these and misrepresentation or intentional omission, I have already given to you. I have already told you by way of an example that some disclosure is required to be made and the company does not make intentionally that disclosure. And third thing is misrepresentation of accounting principle. Okay, and Kanchan is saying now I can relate auditing. I am also doing articleship and I can relate to most concepts. Yes, Kanchan, that is a good way of learning. Say what you are reading in theory, if you try to link those things practically, then chances of rote learning would come down considerably and your understanding would also increase. Okay. And students, you guys had to understand that chartered accountancy course is not just about solving accountancy questions. It is not about solving accountancy questions. If you guys feel that that you are good at solving accounts questions, so you would become a good chartered accountant, sorry, you are mistaken. Because why? Because chartered accountancy is a course which is highly analytical. It involves application, cross linkages of various things, accounts with auditing, auditing with law, okay, auditing with other things, okay, auditing with income tax, auditing with corporate laws, auditing with the indirect taxes, financial statement with direct taxes, indirect taxes. So there are cross linkages everywhere. So you cannot see the things in isolation. That is why students, that is why guys, students fail or cut a sorry figure in their exams because they are unable to motivate themselves to read theory subjects. Whenever they open the module, they doze off. एक पेज पढ़ा और नींद आने लग जाती है उनको, because they cannot stimulate their own systems internally to study those things, to analyze those things, because they are not having any context. Okay. So is that clear? So I am giving you a lot of बेकार का ज्ञान, you can say. Yes, you can give. Yes, Kiran, you can give. Any group you can give, one or two. Now Bhumika is saying how charging capital items as revenue is fraud, because When you charge capital items as revenue as fraud, then your assets are misstated. Although your assets are misstated, charging capital items as revenue, your assets are misstated and you are claiming expenses which are in fact not expenses. You are claiming more expenses. Okay. So Bhumika, is the point clear to you? Yes, Bhumika, is the point clear to you? So when fraudulent financial reporting is done, it often involves management override of controls that otherwise may appear to be operating effectively. Obviously, when say the management is involved in fraudulent financial reporting, or obviously it is done with the knowledge of high ups in the company, with the knowledge of responsible persons in the company. Okay, so although apparently it might seem that control system is working effectively, but it would involve override of controls. Okay, so how controls can be overridden? Like engaging in complex calculations, जो किसी को समझ ही ना आए, सब कुछ गोलमोल कर दो. ओके, recording fictitious journal entries, by recording entries which do not exist. Yes, Kanchan, yes, that's very good. Booking of capital asset and expenses. You see that you are saying that you have seen it in your while you undergoing your articleship. That's very good. Okay, like advancing or delaying recognition of revenues. से किसी चीज का से how revenue can be boosted. For example, say some party has given me some advance for carrying for supplying some goods, and I show it in my books as sales. क्रेडिट साइड की आइटम है, वैसे तो मेरी लाइबिलिटी है, एडवांस रिसीव फ्रॉम कस्टमर. ओके, एंड आई एम शोइंग इट एज सेल्स. So what I am doing, I am advancing the recognition of revenue. The revenue which was to be shown in next year, that I am showing in the current year. Okay, so altering the records, concealing or not disclosing the facts. So these are all general things where by which the managements can override the controls. Okay. So fraudulent financial reporting is clear to you guys? Yes. And is fraudulent financial reporting is clear to you? Yes, tell me guys, is fraudulent financial reporting clear to you, or should I repeat it again? Sanjeet is saying, what is the difference between manipulation and misrepresentation? Doesn't manipulating an account is similar to misrepresenting the account? So there is a difference. So manipulation, guys, manipulations or falsification means rather to some sort of active involvement of management in, like say, uh, sales are, say, inflated. Okay, so this is a manipulation of account. The accounts are falsified by inflating the sales. Okay, and misrepresentation or intentional omission. So misrepresentation you have to correlate misrepresentation with intentional omission, because SA 240 uh, tries to explain these things under the same head. So misrepresentation means to represent something, uh, to mislead somebody else by not giving him true picture. It is rather a passive sort of thing, doing passively something, not with some active involvement, but with passive some but with the passivity, by not disclosing something intentionally. Okay, Sanjeet, is it clear? Yes, Sanjeet M, is it clear? Yes, Sanjeet. So now we come to misappropriation of assets. So first thing was misstatements arising from fraudulent financial reporting. Now it is misappropriation of assets. So as the name says, misappropriation of assets, to misappropriate some assets, like to steal some assets. ओके, किसी ने, कोई इंप्लॉइज ने कोई इन्वेंट्रीज चुरा ली, या कैश की चोरी हो गई. ओके, मिस एप्रोप्रिएशन ऑफ कैश, डिफॉल्केशन ऑफ कैश, एम्बेजलमेंट ऑफ कैश, कैशियर ने मिलके कैश चोरी कर लिया किसी किसी और के साथ मिलके. ओके, या से डमी वर्कर्स को पेमेंट हो गई, कैश पेमेंट हो गई डमी वर्कर्स को, जो वर्कर्स कंपनी में एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करते, उनकी वेज शीट्स पे फेक नेम दिखा के उनको पेमेंट हो गई. या यू कैन से फेक फेक एक्सपेंसेस की पेमेंट हो गई. इट मींस कैश हैज एक्चुअली मूव्ड आउट, बट against fictitious vouchers. In fact, those expenditures were never incurred. Those expenditure were never incurred. Yes, Darshan, you need not go there. It is not. It is not of much relevance. Yes, burglary of cash. Yes, you can say. Burglary is not a right word to say, Mohit. Burglary usually is usually associated with house breaking, like when you forcibly enter some premises, some area, by breaking locks with the intention to steal. So here these are committed by burglars who are, okay, but here we are talking about misappropriating assets by the employees of the company. So all they are white collar people, suited booted, job है, सुबह बैग लेके आएंगे. Okay, so we are talking about those people. We are not talking about those people who are not we are not talking about those peoples, those enemies who are visible. We are talking about invisible enemies who in the part of their duties while they are on the payrolls of the company. They are devising novel ways, new ways, ingenious ways to commit frauds. So by through those ways, these people are misappropriating companies' assets. Okay. So these assets might be inventories, small inventories, से कोई ले जाते हैं थोड़ा बहुत costly inventories, ले say like you have seen in jewelry showrooms, guys, it is a very precious item. Okay, so how elaborate bandobast jewelry showroom owners had done, CCTV cameras and all that. Why? So that employees are not able to misappropriate the assets. एक भी डायमंड चुरा लिया, ठीक है, तो लाखों रुपए का डायमंड है. ओके, so clear. So the term in context of cash defalcation, cash misappropriation by employees is generally, the proper word is embezzlement. So embezzlement, English word is embezzlement. गमन करना, जिसको हिंदी में कहते हैं गमन करना. So got it? Yes, Mohit, you can say so. So misappropriation of assets, it involves a theft of entities' assets and is often perpetrated by employees in small and immaterial amounts. Okay. So like employees are taking away small amounts with them. जब भी उनका मौका लगता है. Again, motive क्या है? Opportunity, perceived opportunity, because they know they are making. So now what you have studied, now try to correlate with their motives. Okay. So when an employee takes away some small amounts of inventories with him, what is his motive? He knows, because he senses that an opportunity exists and he would not be caught. कि कोई छोटी मोटी बात पे कोई ध्यान नहीं देगा, सो लेके 9 to 11 हो लो. ओके. However, it can also involve management. Misappropriation of assets can also be done by the management also in very finer ways. Okay. So how misappropriation can be done? Embezzling receipts, stealing physical assets. Embezzling receipts क्या है? से किसी पार्टी से मेरे पास कैश में पेमेंट आ रही है, कोई डेटर है, छोटे छोटे कस्टमर है, उसमें एक आदमी की ड्यूटी लिखी हुई है सेल्स पर्सन की कि जाके उनसे आप 10,000 रुपए की पेमेंट, बहुत छोटे छोटे कस्टमर है, उनसे लेके आनी है. ओके, उनकी शॉप से जाके आपको लेके आनी है. ओके. तो मैं वो पैसा, वो जो सेल्समैन है वो गोल कर जाता है. ही पुट्स इनटू हिज ऑन पॉकेट, या 10 दिन में 1 लाख रुपया लेके आएगा और बोलेगा 50,000 आए. He may make excuses. So embezzling receipts. So he is embezzling cash receipts. Okay. और से कोई बैड डेट अकाउंट हो चुका है कंपनी में, ऑलरेडी रिटर्न ऑफ हो चुका है, उससे पेमेंट आने की कोई उम्मीद नहीं है, और somehow the employee is able to recover from that person, तो वो कंपनी में से पैसे जमा ही नहीं कराता, वो अपने अकाउंट में जमा करा देता है. ओके. सो रिकवरी फ्रॉम रिटर्न अकाउंट्स, क्योंकि बिकॉज अगर मैनेजमेंट का इंटरनल कंट्रोल स्ट्रांग नहीं है तो दे माइट नॉट कम टू नो कि देयर हैज बीन रिकवरी इन रिटर्न ऑफ अकाउंट्स. मैनेजमेंट तो उसको बैड डेट्स में डाल चुकी है, बट्टे खाते में. Okay. So stealing physical assets और intellectual property rights, किसी के ट्रेड सीक्रेट्स, इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी राइट स्टील करना, वो भी एक एसेट है. आईपीआर इज ऑल्सो एन एसेट. ओके. और से स्टीलिंग स्क्रैप फॉर रीसेल. सो स्क्रैप इज ऑल्सो ए वेरी फ्रॉड प्रॉन एरिया. सो जो कंपनीज में स्क्रैप जनरेट होती है, जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट्स हैं उनमें स्क्रैप जनरेट होती है. सो इफ देयर इज नो एडिक्वेट इंटरनल कंट्रोल, सो एम्प्लॉइज कैन मैनिपुलेट दैट, क्योंकि वेस्टेज स्क्रैप है एंड द मैनेजमेंट डजंट हैव ए साउंड इंटरनल कंट्रोल ओवर इट. सो employees may sell this off without the knowledge of the management. So in this way, what they are doing, they are misappropriating assets, because scrap, whatever wastage, it was an asset of the company from which it was part of inventories wastage. Okay. From which some substantial amounts were to be realized. Clear? Causing an entity to pay for goods and services not received. Say it can also happen that the company is paying to some persons, the company is saying to some vendors for which it has not received any goods. सिर्फ उसके बिल ही आए हैं, कोई सामान आया ही नहीं है उसका. there is no inventories have been received or no services have been received. And how the bills are being paid? By collusion with 3-4 employees. स्टोर वाला भी मिल गया, परचेज मैनेजर भी मिल गया, अकाउंटेंट भी मिल गया. ओके. collusion. So that is why again we say that internal control has got its limitation. That is why we say that control risk is always there. And now remember SA 315, control risk होता है कि नहीं? Can it be zero? Can it be zero? No, हो ही नहीं सकता कभी, क्योंकि कोई ना कोई पॉसिबिलिटी तो रहेगी ही रहेगी. और क्योंकि सारे रिस्क थोड़ा थोड़ा रहेंगे, इसलिए ऑडिट रिस्क भी रहेगा. तो क्लियर है गाइस आपको? conceptual, are you getting conceptual clarity students? Or kickbacks paid by vendors to entities purchasing agents in return for inflating prices. Say kickbacks can be paid. So what are kickbacks? Kanchan, you are saying no. Of what? My question was whether there is conceptual clarity to you. क्या आपको क्लियर है कि नहीं? अब बताइए आपको क्लियर हुआ कि नहीं? Yes or no? Kanchan, if there is any doubt, please let me know. So what are kickbacks? Kickbacks क्या है students? You must have heard this word many times. It comes in the news many times. Those of you who are listening to English news, then you must have heard the term kickbacks, that there has been allegation that kickbacks were paid. So what does it mean, kickbacks? Kickbacks means that से मैंने किसी कंपनी से कोई माल, एक कंपनी ने किसी सप्लायर से कोई माल खरीदा, और से मेरा एम्प्लॉय जो है, द माय एम्प्लॉय has colluded with that supplier, and say the price which was to be 50 rupees kg, he somehow managed, and the bill was raised for say 80 rupees per kg, and that 30 rupees kg inflated price he he managed to get the bill passed from the company, and that amount was credited in the account of the supplier, and the both of them shared the loot amount. Both of them shared the booty. So these are the kickbacks. Okay, sophisticated way of committing fraud. Sophisticated way of committing fraud. So that the transaction is carried out at a higher price. So transaction, in fact, the goods have come, but the but its cost is shown to be more than what it actually was. Okay, by collusion, by passing the by overriding, by bypassing the internal controls. Okay, and payment is made from the account of the company to that supplier, and the difference amount is shared, okay, between the colluding persons and that supplier. Okay, so clear, guys? You understand now? Yes, illegal payment, Sayyid, you are saying correctly. You know about kickbacks. So like you are hearing in a news that there has been allegation for kickbacks paid to so and so. Okay, you are hearing that there were kickbacks in, say, such a deal, in X deal or Y deal, such type of things. So using an entity's assets for personal use. See, if some asset belongs to the company, okay, but in fact it is not being used for the company, it is being used for the personal benefit of some employee of the company. ओके, नाम कंपनी के है लेकिन उसको यूज कौन कर रहा है? सम एम्प्लॉय यूज कर रहा है फॉर हिज पर्सनल यूज. ओके, सो दैट इज आल्सो एन एग्जांपल ऑफ मिस एप्रोप्रिएशन ऑफ एसेट्स. क्लियर स्टूडेंट्स? So misappropriation of assets is often accompanied by false or misleading records in order to conceal the fact that assets are missing. So उसके साथ जो है records भी manipulate किए जाते हैं to conceal the facts that assets are missing. उस बात को छुपाने के लिए कि assets missing है, कि पता ना चल जाए. Okay. Misappropriation of goods. So misappropriation is of goods, say like in case of inventories. So unless the management has developed a sound control system, it carries out the periodic checks. So misappropriation of goods may be difficult to detect. Okay, so many preventive checks are kept by the management in this regard, like installing CCTV cameras and security person, frisking persons when they go out from the plant, so that they are not carrying out the things with them. Okay, clear? So misappropriation of goods is clear. Now defalcation of cash. Defalcation of cash. So defalcation means same thing, embezzlement of cash, misappropriation of cash. Now here we are talking about cash. So misappropriation of assets, we are understanding it under two heads. One is misappropriation of goods and another is defalcation of cash. Okay, so how it can be done? One thing is inflating cash payments. Now कैसे कैश पेमेंट्स जो हैं मैंने उसको ही इन्फ्लेट कर दिया. How? By, say, like I had given you example at the beginning, by showing some dummy workers in the wage sheets. In the wage sheets, those workers do not exist, but the company is paying to those workers. So the amount is being misappropriated. So cash is, actual payment is not being made to some actual payment is not being made, but the cash is being misappropriated. The cash which is shown as having been paid to some person, some workers, this is being misappropriated by the concerned person who is involved in committing this type of fraud. Okay, so by inflating cash payments, or say by making fictitious vouchers for cash payments. So for small expenses, fictitious vouchers are generated for which expenses were never incurred, but these are shown to have been paid, and the cash is misappropriated by the concerned person. So it is an example of inflating cash payments. Okay, now another thing is suppressing cash receipts. Suppressing cash receipts. Now, how this can happen? Suppressing cash receipts. Suppressing cash receipts means that cash receipts, now we are talking about cash, that cash receipts are artificially suppressed. Say मेरे को कैश 1 लाख मिला and then I show कि मेरे को 50,000 मिला और 50,000 रुपए मिसअप्रोप्रिएट हो गए. ये इसका मतलब है कि उसको सप्रेस करना, दबाना. सप्रेसिंग कैश रिसीट्स. तो इसके क्या मेथड्स हैं? One method is teaming and leading. So that is important, guys. Teaming and leading. So what is teaming and leading? Now you have to remember two things. Teaming and leading is a method of suppressing cash receipts. Number one. Number two, its modus operandi is such that, say, cash is received from a customer. Okay, then what the concerned person does, he does not credit it in the account of that person. Okay, he misappropriates it. Lekin say he also knows that the management people, they know that cash has come from this person. So what does he do? Cash received from somebody else is credited in account of Mr. earlier person, Mr. X, from whom he misappropriated the money. Okay, so in this way he is hiding the fraud he has committed in the account of A by crediting amount received from Mr. B. Okay. So similarly, when amount is received from another person, he again credits it in the account of second person. So this way he makes a fraud and he creates a cycle so that some float of money is with him. Okay, so that some float of money is with him. So unless and until the management communicates with that person or it checks its statement of account, it doesn't, the fraud doesn't come to management's knowledge. से वो तो मैनेजमेंट उस आदमी से मिस्टर ए से स्टेटमेंट मंगवाई कि हमने कैश कब दिया था, और उसका पता चलेगा कि उसने कैश उस डेट को दिया था, बी ने उस डेट को दिया था, then management would come to know about the fraud. So teaming and leading means this thing. Okay, so Kanchan, this is a name given to the to this type of टेक्निक. एक आदमी से अमाउंट मिसअप्रोप्रिएट करके दूसरे के अकाउंट में एंटर करना. ओके, तीसरा, थर्ड, writing off as debts, which we have already seen. जिन अकाउंट्स में जो रिटर्न ऑफ हो चुके हैं उनसे डेट्स को मिस अप्रोप्रिएट कर लेना. नॉट अकाउंटिंग फॉर कैश सेल्स फुल्ली, कैश सेल्स को सप्रेस कर देना. मिसलिनियस रिसीट्स को सप्रेस कर देना जो कैश में आती हैं, लाइक सेल ऑफ स्क्रैप, इस टाइप की जो पेटी आइटम्स हैं उसको सप्रेस कर देना. ओके, सो ब्रॉडली defalcation of cash can take place either by inflating cash payment, या तो कैश पेमेंट बढ़ा दो और जो रिजल्टेंट कैश है उसको मिस अप्रोप्रिएट कर लो, या कैश रिसीट्स को सप्रेस कर दो और उसको जो कैश रिसीट सप्रेस किया आपने उसको मिस अप्रोप्रिएट कर लिया आपने. ओके, क्लियर है? यस गाइस, इज दैट क्लियर? Now we come to another important thing. Detection of fraud and error duty of an auditor. So students, हम फिर से अपने फंडामेंटल पे आ जाते हैं. We again come to our fundamental. फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स की प्रिपरेशन किसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है? Whose responsibility it is to? Yes, दर्शन. फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी प्रिपरेशन की किसकी है? Everybody of you knows it is of मैनेजमेंट. इंटरनल कंट्रोल एस्टेब्लिश करने की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी किसकी है? Whose responsibility is to establish internal control? Whose responsibility is to design, implement and maintain internal control? It is again of management. Management responsibility. So when management is responsible for preparation of financial statements, when management is responsible for internal control, then whose primary responsibility is to detect fraud and errors? इसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है फ्रॉड एंड एरर्स को डिटेक्ट करना. Whose responsibility is to detect fraud and errors? प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी मैनेजमेंट की है, क्योंकि जो मैनेजमेंट है वही रिस्पॉन्सिबल है फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स बनाने के लिए और इंटरनल कंट्रोल बनाने के लिए. तो जो उससे एसोसिएटेड, उस सिस्टम से एसोसिएटेड फ्रॉड और एरर्स हैं, लॉजिकली उसकी भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी मैनेजमेंट की है डिटेक्ट करने की. सो द प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ डिटेक्शन ऑफ फ्रॉड एंड एरर्स लाइज विद मैनेजमेंट. दिस यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड. इसमें गलती नहीं करना. कभी फ्रॉड और एरर आते ही ऑडिटर दिमाग में आ जाता है. पहले ऑडिटर का क्या रोल है वो हम अभी डिस्कस करेंगे, लेकिन प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी की बात हो रही है. सो द प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ प्रिवेंशन एंड डिटेक्शन ऑफ फ्रॉड रेस्ट्स विद द एंटिटी, विद दोज चार्ज with management people. Okay, so as per SA 240, the primary responsibility for the prevention and detection of fraud rests with those charged with the governance of the company and the management. Okay, it is important that management and those charged with governance place a strong emphasis on fraud prevention. सबसे पहले तो उनका इंटरनल कंट्रोल स्ट्रांग होना चाहिए. ओके, which may reduce opportunities of fraud at the first place and fraud deterrence, because if the employees know that they would be caught, deterrence means that which stops somebody to commit some act. Okay, so agar again I am taking example of signal. When you are crossing the signal, if there is CCTV camera installed on the top, then you would think twice when you are crossing it wrongly, because you know that challan can come at your home. Okay. So fraud deterrence. So like installing CCTV camera is a deterrence. Similarly, proper system, establishment of a proper system which prompts the employees to perform their duties methodically in accordance with the rules and regulations laid by the organization, laid by the company. Okay, because they know that if they commit fraud, they would be caught and they might be thrown out of the job. There may be FIR because it is a criminal offense. They might be behind the bars. Okay. So these are the general principles laid down in SA 240. What are the general principle? Again the same thing. SA 200 में हमने पढ़ा था that auditor obtains reasonable assurance that financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether caused by fraud or error. But due to inherent limitations, we know that there can be material misstatements, that it is quite possible that auditor may not be able to detect fraud, even though audit is carried properly, it is planned properly, it is performed in accordance with essays, but there is always a possibility that there can be misstatements due to fraud even in audited accounts. Okay. But in fact, the auditor would have to show that in fact he carried out all those procedures which were required by those essays. Otherwise his he would be liable. Okay. Civil and criminal offense. Yes, civil and criminal offense means when you do some criminal act, like fraud is a criminal effect offense. So it can not only involve a monetary fine or penalty, but one can go behind the bars also. One can go to jail also. Okay. So number 2, the risk of not detecting a material misstatement. So certain acts in the law are by very nature defined as criminal acts, which are criminal. Somebody kills somebody, it is a criminal act. Fraud is committed, it is a criminal act. Okay. So the risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than risk of not detecting one from error. So chances of not detecting material misstatement from fraud is higher than the chances of not detecting material misstatements due to errors from the perspective of an auditor. Okay. Why it is so? Because when fraud is committed, it involves sophisticated scheme of things. It involves certain procedures designed to hide it. Okay, ताकि कोई देखे तो उसको पता ना चले. It because what we have read in the definition of fraud, it involves use of deception. So the basic element of a fraud is the use of deception, that to make somebody believe that this is true when it is false. Okay, clear? So obviously frauds would involve carefully laid down scheme of things. Okay, carefully laid down scheme of things so as to prevent its detection. Okay. So and when many people collude together, So all of them have a common interest, and such type of frauds are difficult to detect. Such type of frauds are difficult to detect. Clear, guys? And third point is the risk of auditor not detecting a material misstatement resulting from management fraud is greater than for employee fraud. Now, which of the two, students tell me, which of the two is more dangerous? Management fraud or employee fraud? We talk about it generally. Which of the two is more dangerous? Employee fraud or management fraud? So guys, employee fraud would always be in small things, in small amounts. Generally, it can run into bigger things, but obviously some sort of system, some sort of checks management must have put in place. Okay, so management fraud, when fraud is committed by the management itself, then it is more dangerous. Since it is more dangerous, it is chances of auditor not detecting a management fraud are also greater. Chances of auditor not detecting a material misstatement arising from management fraud are greater than his not detecting a material misstatement resulting from employee fraud. Okay. Karthik, you are asking to explain forgery. Forgery means to Hindi word I am not remembering. किसी डॉक्टर ओके आर्टिफिशियली उसको फॉर्ज कर लेना. ओके. So while obtaining reasonable assurance, auditor again, but the auditor has to maintain attitude of professional skepticism throughout the audit. He has always to see that there can be risks of frauds, there can be risk of management overriding controls, and there can be risks that audit procedures for detecting errors may not be effective for detecting frauds. So he has to be alert for all these things, and he has to design his audit procedures uh, keeping in mind these type of things. Okay, so clear up till now? Yes, yes, jali is the correct word, Mohit. Yes. So clear, guys. Up till now, is everything crystal clear? Tell me. Mohit, you are asking what is sophisticated? Sophisticated means न, काफी सोच समझ के बनाया गया, which is hard to detect. जो ऊपर से बिल्कुल ठीक लगे और काफी सोच समझ के प्लान करके बनाया गया, अंदर से कुछ और है लेकिन ऊपर से बड़े सोफिस्टिकेटेड वे से बनाया गया. जैसे कोई आदमी अंदर से फ्रॉड है बट ऊपर से वो सूटेड बूटेड है, ऊपर से वो लगता है जेंटलमैन है, उसको हम कहते हैं ही इज ए वेरी सोफिस्टिकेटेड पर्सन. बड़ी बड़ी बातें करता है लेकिन ही कुड बी ए फ्रॉड. ओके, क्लियर? Okay, guys, so let us take a short break for 10 minutes. So see you after 10 minutes, guys. So break for 10 minutes. Yes, welcome back, guys. So there is a question in your module. While auditing XYZ Limited, the auditor was told by Mr. Mahesh, the CEO of the company, that he would be responsible for fraud and errors, if any, occurring in the books of accounts of the company. So, what is the position vis-a-vis SA 240? So, क्या है SA 240? What does it say? So, you have also to remember, you have to write that the primary responsibility for detection of frauds and errors lies with management, with those charged with governance. Primary responsibility for fraud and detection is not of the auditor. The auditor cannot be held responsible for frauds and errors if he has performed his audit in accordance with standards on auditing professionally. Okay, the auditor is concerned with in obtaining a reasonable assurance that financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatements, whether due to frauds or errors, and due to inherent limitations present in audit. There is always a risk that some misstatements may remain undetected, even though the audit of financial statements is carried out in accordance with the financial statements. Okay, so that is the summary. That is a summary. That is the basic thing which you have now never to forget. Which you have never to forget. तो आप कहेंगे कि ऑडिटर की तो फिर कोई रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है. नहीं, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी क्या है कि उसको ऑडिटर ही हैज टू परफॉर्म द ऑडिट इन अकॉर्डेंस विद एसेज by maintaining a attitude of professional skepticism throughout the audit. Okay, he shall perform all the procedures which are required as per essays. Okay, correct, guys? So now next thing is another question is given. After completion of statutory audit of ABC Limited, a fraud was detected at the office of the auditee. Okay, now do not see the answer from the module. After the completion of the statutory audit of ABC Limited, a fraud was detected at the office of the auditee. The management of the company alleged that there is a failure on the part of auditor to detect fraud, and that auditor would be responsible for detecting fraud. Now what you have to say? So you have to state all those things which we have discussed. Okay, these things, all these things we have already discussed. So the summary is that the liability of the auditor for failure to detect fraud exists only when such failure is clearly due to not exercising his reasonable care and skill, or when he has not maintained professional skepticism, or when he has not conducted the audit in accordance with essays, when he is not able to show uh, that the audit was conducted in accordance with essays. Thus, in the instant case, after the completion of audit, if a fraud has been detected, then same can by itself does not mean that auditor did not perform his duty properly. If the auditor can prove with the help of his documentation that is followed adequate procedures necessary for proper conduct of audit, then he cannot be held responsible. However, if the same cannot be proved, then he would be responsible. This is what I have been hammering it out in your minds again and again. I have also told you during chapter 1 also, during chapter 3 also, during chapter 5 also. Again, this thing comes. Because if this conceptual clarity is there, guys, you won't be able to answer wrongly any question related to this topic. Okay. No, Himanshu, you are asking if essays are not competent for a particular thing. Look, the essays consist of very elaborate procedures. Now these are in line with the international standards. These are in line with the worldwide international standards, which are recognized globally. So when the work is performed in accordance with essays, chances are that misstatements would be detected. However, if even if performing by performing the audit work in accordance with essays, by performing all the procedures, and by also maintaining an attitude of professional skepticism. Okay, so all the things are covered in professional skepticism. If something arises, your suspicion, your doubt, then you can perform additional procedures. But the thing is, you have to maintain such an attitude. If, say, some procedure was not there in essay, then did something come to your notice? Did you notice something unusual? And if you notice something, did you carry out additional procedures? If after carrying out additional procedures also you were not able to detect anything, then it's fine enough. It is okay. Because we know that audit only provides reasonable assurance. It is not an investigation. Its purpose is not to dig out fraud. But by performing the procedures, if frauds are dug out on the way, come on the way, then okay, the auditor is concerned with misstatements arising from the fraud. He is concerned with misstatements arising from the fraud, and accordingly his opinion will change. Okay. So Himanshu, is that clear to you? Yes, Himanshu Pathak. Is it clear to you, Himanshu? Tell me. Yes, Himanshu. Yes. Now we come to another thing. There is another term, fraud risk factors. Now, what is this fraud risk factor? ये क्या चीज है guys? थोड़ा सा इसको we try to understand it in general way. So fraud risk factors. What is this? Fraud risk factors. You are able to see the board, guys? So guys, we had at the beginning we had understood that that motives behind committing fraud, these can relate to three things. What were those three things? These were incentives or pressures to commit fraud. Okay, there was perceived opportunity to commit fraud. And third was attitudes, rationalizations. यही तीनों चीजें थी ना स्टूडेंट्स. So when we talk about fraud risk factors, what we are saying is that there are certain conditions or events which might indicate these things. Okay. So there might be certain events or conditions which might indicate these things. Like say if the business environment of the company is changing rapidly and the management is under pressure. Okay. Then management is under pressure to fudge the numbers. Okay. So then it becomes a fraud risk factor. It is a condition or event. It is a fraud risk factor. So risk means chance. So chances of fraud happening in such a case would be greater. So it does not necessarily mean that a fraud would occur in such case. So that is a distinctive point, guys, you have to remember. Fraud risk factors only denote, they only signify that a possibility exists, that a chance is there, that frauds can be committed, that these are conditions, these are events. There are some examples given in essay 240 of fraud risk factors, giving some events or conditions where frauds can exist, but it doesn't mean that whenever those conditions are present, fraud would also be present. It doesn't mean that. Although wherever frauds have occurred, such factors are present, but it doesn't mean that presence of these factors would mean that fraud has been committed. Okay, like in the example I've given to you, the business environment of the company is such that there are greater chances that management is likely to fudge the numbers. Management would inflate its revenues, but it is also possible that management may consist of honest people, and that despite those challenging business environment, those challenging times, the management doesn't indulge in such an activity. It is quite possible. But since fraud risk factor is there, so auditor would be alert. Okay, he would view everything more skeptically. So clear to you guys, basic understanding. Then we will go through your module aram se. Okay, basic understanding is clear to you. Fraud risk factor का क्या मतलब है कि these are events or conditions which may indicate incentive or pressures to commit fraud, perceived opportunity to commit fraud, and attitudes rationalization. And these can relate to both. These can relate to fraudulent financial reporting and to misappropriation of assets. Yes, Diksha. Fraud risk factors only show that there can be a possibility of fraud. Yes. But it doesn't mean that fraud has actually occurred. That because that risk factor is there, it doesn't mean that fraud has actually occurred. Okay, like when we say the risk of material misstatement is there, it doesn't mean that misstatement would always be there. It only means that chances of misstatements are more. Okay, chances of misstatements are there. Okay. Yes, Karthik. It includes these things. So fraud risk factors may be defined as events or conditions that indicate an incentive or pressure to commit fraud or to provide an opportunity to commit fraud. Okay, so again, these are both things: fraudulent financial reporting, misappropriation of assets. It can relate to both the things. Now we will, this is the diagram given: fraud risk factors, fraudulent financial reporting, misappropriation of assets, and all these three things. Okay, so some examples are given. So it is better to go through this list ताकि आपको हर एक कैटेगरी में 2-4 एग्जाम्पल याद रहे. ओके, सो दैट आपके माइंड में पिक्चर बनी रहे कि क्या क्या फ्रॉड रिस्क फैक्टर हो सकते हैं. ओके, लाइक say when financial stability or profitability is threatened by economic, industry or entity operating conditions, like there is high degree of competition in market, or margins are declining, net profit is declining, or gross margin is declining on a year to year basis. Okay, or there is change in technology or product obsolescence. Products are getting, what does product obsolescence means? Products are getting out of date rapidly due to changes in technologies. जैसे मोबाइल में मोबाइल सेट्स एक मॉडल बना, दूसरा मॉडल आ गया 1 साल बाद, तीसरा मॉडल आ गया 6 महीने बाद, वो उस रेट पे नहीं बिकेगी. ओके, क्योंकि पुराना आउटडेटेड मॉडल कोई द पीपल माइट बी अनविलिंग टू बाय. ओके, significant declines in customer demand, again same thing, general. Recurring negative cash flows from operations, तो आपके जो नॉर्मल बिजनेस ऑपरेशंस हैं, जो आपके पास कैश फ्लो आ रहा है और जो जा रहा है, इट इज नेगेटिव. वॉट एवर इज कमिंग इन द बिजनेस is less and whatever is going out is more. Either it is due to the timing factor, liabilities mismatch between liabilities or assets, or it is because due to some interest burdens or other repayment obligations. Okay, so source of funds is less, whereas outgo of funds is more. Okay, so it would result in negative cash flows. So when it happens on a repetitive basis, recurring basis, then the company is caught in that vicious cycle. So ultimately it would have liquidity crisis. Okay, yes, I am explaining to you, Karthik. So the company would have liquidity crisis. It wouldn't have cash enough to say to meet its normal day-to-day expenses like salary of the staff, labor payments. Okay, for it would not be having enough reserves. Okay, so new accounting statutory or regulatory requirements, say new law requirements have come, say stringent law requirements have come. Okay, which require the companies to report profit in a certain way, assume. Okay, then to bypass that, the companies try to show a rosy picture. Okay, because the law, the rules are stringent, that if they strictly follow them, they all the balance sheets, their balance sheets would be in red. Okay, so that is, it might act as an incentive or pressure to commit fraud. Clear? क्लियर गाइस, स्टूडेंट्स मेल डाल दिया करो, मेरे को पता चले कि आपको समझ में आ रहा है. Opportunities like significant related party transactions not in the ordinary course of business or with related entities not audited. Say if the company is transacting with some related parties, okay, whose accounts are unaudited or audited by another firm, so the company's auditor doesn't know the complete picture. Okay, so there is a possibility of fraud. There is a chance of fraud. So it is also a fraud risk factor. It doesn't mean that fraud would be there. Fraud would be there in such a case, but chances are increased. Okay, possibility is there. Assets, liabilities, expenses based on significant estimates. जब आपकी फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स के एलिमेंट्स में सब्जेक्टिव जजमेंट्स ज्यादा हैं, एस्टिमेट्स हैं which are made by the management and which itself involves subjective judgment. Okay, ऑब्जेक्टिव क्राइटेरिया नहीं है एस्टिमेट्स बनाने के लिए, सब्जेक्ट टू वेरियस इंटरप्रिटेशन. सो it creates an opportunity for the management to create fraud, to hoodwink the auditor. Okay, because complex calculation में they can find ways to commit fraud. Okay, like किसी कंपनी ने कोई मर्जर है, एक्विजिशन है, कोई बिजनेस परचेज किया है, so obviously it would involve recording complex entries, subjective judgments. Okay, तो उसमें अपॉर्चुनिटीज एग्जिस्ट करती हैं. कॉम्प्लेक्स ट्रांजैक्शन का जैसे मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दिया, दैट पोज डिफिकल्ट सब्सटेंस ओवर फॉर्म क्वेश्चन. गाइस, सब्सटेंस ओवर फॉर्म अकाउंटेंसी थोड़ी याद है आपको? कैन यू टेल व्हाट इज सब्सटेंस ओवर फॉर्म? लेट अस सी योर अकाउंटेंसी नॉलेज. अकाउंट सीए स्टूडेंट्स का बड़ा पसंदीदा सब्जेक्ट है. यस, सब्सटेंस ओवर फॉर्म. Substance over form. Can you tell guys what is the meaning of substance over form? Substance over form concept. What is the meaning? Have you read about it in your accountancy? Yes guys, no mails till now. Anybody? Are you searching online? Baba, do not search. Just tell who do not know, or if somebody knows it, then please write. Yes, substance over form. Yes, Himanshu has written correctly. Himanshu, have you written yourself out of your own knowledge, or you have copied it from somewhere else? Honest answer. I want an honest answer. If you have copied it, even then it's fine. Just tell. Yes, Singh Rajiv Kumar. You are also correct. You are saying reality over legality. Yes, exact. Ditto. So substance over form means कि what is required by form, what is required by law, and what is the reality. So form is related to law, where reality is related to substance. Whereas reality is related to substance. When we say substance, substance means उसका बेसिक क्या है, उसका ग्राउंड क्या है, उसका आधार क्या है, what does it intend to convey. लाइक किसी आइटम की ट्रीटमेंट है कि वैसे तो वो रूल्स के हिसाब से है, but it is not showing true picture. So उसका नेट इफेक्ट जो उस ट्रीटमेंट का है, उस कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ एंट्रीज का है, वो लीगली तो चाहे ठीक हो, लेकिन इन इफेक्ट, in totality, that effect is misleading. Okay, so that is known as substance over form. So we say that substance is more important than form. So what does it mean? It means that reality is more important than mere following rules, to use the words of Miss Singh Rajiv Kumar. Okay. Yes, Himanshu, you are writing, you are saying that because of BCom exams. Okay, so you are doing your BCom simultaneously, or you have already done your BCom? Okay, that's fine enough. So attitude rationalizations. Okay, so what could be the examples of attitude rationalizations? Like, say, known history of violation of security laws or other regulations. Say if the directors of the company, the auditor knows that they are not violating SEBI laws. SEBI has levied many times penalty. Okay. Okay. SEBI has levied many time penalty, and say they might have issued warnings, and but these kind of people are repeat offenders. Okay, repeat offenders. नाम सुनिए आपने, repeat offenders. They are in the habit of doing the things intentionally. Okay, so they have a background. पिछले जैसे कोई पिछले 3 साल पहले भी he was caught for violation of security laws, and say the directors were imposed penalty, or some regulatory action was taken. Excessive interest by management in maintaining or increasing the entity's inventory price. Say the management is showing excessive undue interest in maintaining a certain trend of, say, its products or of its earning trends. It is very peculiar. It is not decided by market conditions. The management is taking undue interest. Okay. So management fails to remedy known significant deficiencies in internal control on a timely basis. Say, this is also very important. Say the management, it fails to remedy deficiencies in internal control. Say there are certain weaknesses in internal control system. Say like in purchases, the management knows that the system is not strong enough and the frauds can occur in this area. But despite this, the management is not taking any follow-up action. It is sitting with its eyes closed. Okay. So what? Because why? It is letting the fraud happen. It is creating those conditions that कोई बात नहीं, fraud हो जाए, उनको असर ही नहीं पड़ता कोई. Because they have such an attitude. They themselves are dishonest people, so they have such an attitude. Okay. The owner manager makes no distinction between personal and business transactions. So जो अपने पर्सनल खर्चे हैं वो भी बिजनेस में बुक हो रहे हैं. से घर के बिजली के बिल हैं वो भी किसी एंटिटी में उसमें बुक हो रहे हैं, उसके प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस में, उसके प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस या ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट में. ओके, कोई डिस्टिंक्शन नहीं है. Why? Because they are careless, dishonest people. They just want to book expenses to to avoid their tax liabilities. Okay. And one more important thing, frequent disputes with current or predecessor auditor, कि आपके ऑडिटर के साथ ही डिस्प्यूट चल रहा है या पुराने ऑडिटर के साथ डिस्प्यूट चल रहा है ऑन रिपोर्टिंग एट मैटर्स. It means that there is some hanky panky. They are recurring disputes. It is not a one shot affair. Recurring disputes, frequent disputes, बार बार हो रहे हैं. और आप ऑडिटर को कहते हैं कि मेरा काम जल्दी खत्म कर दीजिए, मेरा ऑडिट फटाफट 4 दिन में कीजिए, मेरे को बैंक में बैलेंस शीट देनी है. आई डू नॉट नो. सो यू आर पुटिंग प्रेशर ऑन द ऑडिटर टू कंप्लीट द वर्क. इट मीन्स दैट योर इंटेंशन is not good. Okay, you are putting unrealistic time constraints regarding completion of the audit. Yes, it is fraudulent. You cannot claim personal for personal goods. It is prohibited. If the goods are not used for the business, it is prohibited under GST laws. So these kind of examples are given. Similarly, relating to misappropriation of assets, examples, incentives like if the employees knows, if the say business environment is such that employees knows कि अब तो ये बिजनेस का तो बहुत बुरा हाल होने वाला है और जो कंपनी है वो सब एम्प्लॉइज की कई एम्प्लॉइज की छुट्टी कर रही है. सो यू माइट हैव रेड रिपोर्ट्स दैट ड्यूरिंग पेंडेमिक many employees were laid off. Now in some sectors also news comes that in this sectors X company, Y company, they are laying off 300 people, 400 people. Okay, so when the employees know, they expect that some layoffs can happen, okay, in coming 6-7 months, so they may commit fraud. There might exist conditions, so it might pressurize them to commit fraud. Okay, opportunities, so like large amounts of cash on hand. Say if an employee is having under his custody, under his control, large amounts of cash, okay, then he may find an opportunity in it to commit fraud. If large amounts are not there, then okay, he may not think of committing a fraud. But if large amounts are there, then greed may overpower him. Okay, then greed may overpower him, and he can use it as an opportunity to misappropriate the cash, to misappropriate the assets. So such kind of things. Okay, guys. So these are the examples which you can study. And another thing is circumstances relating to possibility of fraud. So these are also our similar lines. Like these typically show that there are misstatements in financial statements due to fraud. Like there is discrepancy in the accounting records. Like there are last minute adjustments. Some journal entries are passed on the last day. Okay. So these might be fraudulent. Such type of things. There are missing documents or documents that appear to have been altered. There is some overwriting on the documents, or there are some unreconciled items, unexplained items on reconciliations, or for which say the accounts officer or the accountant doesn't have any answer. So these kind of things indicate possibilities of fraud resulting from misstatements in financial statements. Okay. So now let us do quickly some correct incorrect type of questions. Yes, guys. Question number 1. Are you able to see the screen? Fraud risk factors denotes events or condition pointing to the fact that frauds have actually occurred. Fraud risk factors denote events or condition pointing to the fact that frauds have actually occurred. Is it true or false? Yes, Keshav Pansari, blank mail. Fraud risk factors denote events or conditions pointing to the fact that frauds have actually occurred. Only mail from Manisha. Diksha has also replied. So what do fraud risk factors indicate or denote? So students, आप पूरा जो है ना क्वेश्चन पढ़ते नहीं है, ये बड़ी आप में दिक्कत है आप लोगों में. You do not write the question completely. Read the question completely. Sorry. आप एक दो वर्ड देखते हैं और उसको देखते हैं, अरे अरे यही बोला था, अरे ठीक है. Okay. So make it a habit to study the line, to study the question completely, patiently. 1 मिनट में कंसंट्रेशन से पढ़िए स्टूडेंट्स. So this statement is incorrect. Now Sudhanshu Shekhar, you are writing it is correct because it denotes events or condition. आपने इससे आगे पढ़ाई नहीं. Events और condition आपको इतना याद है that I had discussed about events or conditions. तो आपने बोला events और condition आ गया. Okay, it is right. So fraud risk factor denotes event or condition pointing to the fact that fraud may exist, but it does not show that fraud has actually occurred. These are events or conditions pointing towards the possibility of fraud, but they do not. The existence of such events or conditions do not guarantee that fraud is there. These only show that chances of fraud are there. Whether fraud is there or not, this would depend upon the outcome of procedures. Okay. Yes, Varsha, we are getting your mails. Mohit, how you are saying it is correct? Frauds have actually occurred. It is incorrect. फ्रॉड, क्या फ्रॉड रिस्क फैक्टर से ये पता चलता है कि फ्रॉड एक्चुअली हुआ है? नो. इट पॉइंट्स टू द फैक्ट दैट फ्रॉड मे एग्जिस्ट. इट हैज नॉट एक्चुअली अकर्ड. Now number 2. Teaming and lading is a method used for inflating cash payments. Is it a method used for inflating cash payments? Yes, guys. Teaming and lading is a method used for inflating cash payments. Sayyad, Darshan and Diksha. Yes, Sonali, Hira, Himanshu. All of you have answered rightly. This statement is also incorrect. Teaming and lading is a method used for suppressing cash receipts. Okay, clear? And Sushma, when you write, you cannot write just suppressing method. Suppressing what? If you write only suppressing method, no credit would be there in the exam. Zero. Okay. So then students say, हमने तो ठीक लिखा था. We had written in the exam correctly, and they put blame on the paper checker. You have to write completely that it is a method of suppressing cash receipts. Yes, Mohit, you have not sent your mail. You have vanished. You have disappeared. Number 3. Risk of the auditor not detecting a material misstatement resulting from management fraud is greater than for employee fraud. Is it correct or incorrect? Risk of the auditor not detecting a material misstatement resulting from management fraud is greater than for employee fraud. Third, yes, Varsha's mail has come. Himanshu. The risk of the auditor not detecting a material misstatement resulting from management fraud is greater than for employee fraud. किसमें रिस्क ज्यादा है ऑडिटर का? इट इज करेक्ट. ऑडिटर का रिस्क ज्यादा है in material misstatement resulting from management fraud, that he would not be able to detect material misstatement resulting from management fraud. Okay, because management would involve sophisticated procedures to conceal the fraud. Okay, they can override the controls. So this statement is correct. Now number 4. Manipulation and falsification of accounts is an example of fraudulent financial reporting. किसका एग्जाम्पल है ये? Manipulation and falsification of accounts. No, Karthik, your reasoning is totally incorrect. Fourth, manipulation and falsification of accounts is an example of fraudulent financial reporting. Yes, students, tell me. Yes, all of you have answered rightly. Yes, Mohit, you have also answered correctly. Syed, Sushma, Manisha, Sonali, Himanshu, and all others. So this statement is correct, because when falsification or manipulation is done, then it is an example of fraudulent financial reporting. Okay. Bhumika is also saying it is correct. Yes. Operating losses in a company making the specter of bankruptcy imminent is a fraud risk factor pertaining to fraudulent financial reporting. First, students, understand the statement. क्या आपको स्टेटमेंट समझ आ गई है, और शुड आई ट्रांसलेट इन हिंदी? Yes, tell me. Have you understood the statement? Yes, Bhumika, your answer is also right. Tell me if you have understood the statement at point number 5, or does it need some sort of translation? So the statement says, if there are operating losses in a company and which makes the possibility of bankruptcy imminent, which increases the possibility that the company would become insolvent, would become bankrupt in a short time, then it is a fraud risk factor pertaining to fraudulent financial reporting. So I have translated. हिंदी में इसका मतलब ये है कि किसी कंपनी में ऑपरेटिंग लॉसेस हो रहे हैं, मतलब उसके ऑपरेट करने से लॉस हो रहा है, ऑपरेशनल लॉसेस हैं, जिससे कि कंपनी इंसॉल्वेंट होने की कगार पर है. ओके, तो वेदर इट इज ए फ्रॉड रिस्क फैक्टर इन रिलेशन टू फ्रॉडुलेंट फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग, टेल मी. नाउ आई हैव ट्रांसलेटेड इट. पेपर में कोई ट्रांसलेशन नहीं करके देगा. Yes, guys, only 1-2 mails. Darshan and Mohit. What about others? So this statement is correct, guys. अगर किसी कंपनी में ऑपरेटिंग लॉस हो रहे हैं और वो इंसॉल्वेंट होने की कगार पर है, so obviously it would not like to be shown to the users that it is going to be insolvent. It would try to somehow hide its true picture. Okay, so then what does it become? What does it become, guys? It becomes a risk factor. So it becomes a risk factor. So the statement is true. So okay, guys, so I hope that you have got some idea of chapter number 5. Balance chapter we shall be doing day after tomorrow on Saturday, the reporting part. Nonetheless, it is very, very important, reporting part from the point of view of provisions contained in Companies Act 2013. Okay, so no, Mohit, it is a fraud risk factor, because the chances of company committing fraud in such a situation are there. It would provide a incentive or pressure on the company to commit a fraud. It would come in that category. Okay, so good night to all of you guys. See you again. Bye.